The Young and the Restless spoilers Wednesday, September 25, 2024. The atmosphere in Genoa City was thick with tension, secrets weaving through the lives of its residents like an intricate web. Nick Newman found himself at the center of a storm he never anticipated, one that involved his two daughters, Mariah and Faith, and their collective concern for Sharon. The once stable matriarch was spiraling, her actions growing increasingly erratic and potentially dangerous. Nick had noticed the changes in Sharon's behavior, but it was Mariah who voiced the concerns that none of them wanted to acknowledge. "Dad, we have to do something," she insisted, her eyes reflecting both fear and determination. "Mom's not herself. If we don't act now, I'm afraid of what she might do." Faith nodded in agreement, her usually bright demeanor overshadowed by worry. "She's pushing everyone away. She won't let us get close enough to help." Mariah had a plan, drastic but, in her mind, necessary. "We need to intervene," she declared. "If we can get her the help she needs, maybe we can bring her back to us." She proposed that they gently confine Sharon and ensure she takes her medication for bipolar disorder, hoping it would stabilize her condition. Nick hesitated. The idea of locking up Sharon and forcing her to take medication was extreme. But Mariah was adamant. "Dad, she's slipping away. The longer we wait, the worse it will get. You know as well as I do that she could hurt someone, or herself." Sharon, however, was not oblivious to their concerns. Her intuition was sharper than ever, and she could sense the distance growing between her and her family. Each attempt they made to reach out felt like an intrusion, and she met their efforts with hostility. "I don't need your help," she snapped at Mariah during one encounter. "I'm perfectly fine. Just leave me alone." But Mariah couldn't let it go. The fear that her mother might cross a line from which there was no return haunted her. Time was running out, and the family was caught between respecting Sharon's autonomy and protecting her from herself. Mariah feared that if they didn't act soon, Sharon could become a danger not just to herself but to others as well. Meanwhile, across town, corporate battles were brewing. Audra Charles was reeling from her sudden ousting as CEO of Glissade. The board's decision had blindsided her, and she found herself cornered by none other than Victor Newman. His influence was vast, and his threats were not to be taken lightly. "You've underestimated me, Audra," he warned, his voice cold. "I suggest you stay out of matters that don't concern you." Feeling betrayed and desperate, Audra decided to fight back. Rumors began to circulate that Tucker McCall was returning to Genoa City, a development that could shift the balance of power. Audra knew that invoking Tucker's name would rattle Victor, and she wasn't above using that to her advantage. "You think you've won, Victor," she taunted. "But Tucker's on his way back, and when he arrives, everything will change." Victor raised an eyebrow, skepticism etched on his face. "Tucker? Returning here? I highly doubt that. He's too preoccupied with Ashley and his own affairs to involve himself in our disputes." Yet, the mere possibility unsettled him. Tucker held significant sway, and his return could complicate Victor's meticulously laid plans. Determined not to be caught off guard, Victor decided to keep a close eye on the situation. "Perhaps it's time to reassess," he mused to himself. One can never be too cautious. Back at the Newman residence, Nick convened a family meeting. "We need to approach this carefully," he told Mariah and Faith. "Sharon is more perceptive than we're giving her credit for. If she feels cornered, it could push her further away." Faith looked between her father and sister, concern evident in her eyes. "What if we tried talking to her doctor? Maybe there's a way to help without forcing her." Mariah shook her head. "We've tried gentle approaches, Faith. She refuses to see anyone. At this point, an intervention might be our only option." As the family grappled with their dilemma, Sharon was wrestling with demons of her own. Her thoughts were a whirlwind, a cacophony of voices and emotions that she couldn't quiet. She felt watched, judged, and the paranoia was becoming suffocating. "They're plotting against me," she whispered to herself. "I won't let them control me." Her behavior grew more erratic. She began avoiding places she used to frequent, cutting off communication with friends, and spending long hours isolated in her home. The walls seemed to close in around her, and the line between reality and her fears blurred dangerously. Mariah decided it was time to act. Enlisting the help of a trusted therapist, she set the plan in motion. "We have to do this tonight," she told Nick. Before things get any worse, under the guise of a family dinner, they invited Sharon over, hoping to create a safe environment for the intervention. But Sharon was suspicious. As she entered the house, her eyes darted around, noting the closed doors and the tense expressions on their faces. "What's going on?" she demanded. Nick stepped forward cautiously. "Sharon, we're worried about you. We just want to talk." She took a step back, her hands clenched into fists. "I knew it. You're all in on it. You think I'm crazy?" "Mom, please," Mariah pleaded. "We just want to help." "Help?" Sharon laughed bitterly. "By locking me up? Forcing me to take pills? I won't let you control me." The situation escalated quickly. Sharon's agitation turned to anger, and she bolted for the door. Faith tried to block her path, but Sharon pushed past her, disappearing into the night. The family was left standing in stunned silence. "This is worse than I thought," Nick admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "We might have just pushed her over the edge." Meanwhile, Victor's concerns about Tucker were growing. Despite his initial skepticism, he couldn't ignore the potential threat. "I need confirmation," he instructed his assistant. "Find out if Tucker is making moves to return." His sources reported back that Tucker was indeed occupied elsewhere, content in his relationship with Ashley Abbott and seemingly uninterested in Genoa City's affairs. But Victor knew better than to let his guard down. "Even if he's not planning a return, we must be prepared for any eventuality." Audra, on the other hand, was capitalizing on Victor's uncertainty. She began reaching out to Tucker's associates, planting seeds of his imminent return. Her goal was to create enough doubt and distraction to weaken Victor's hold over Glissade. "If I can't have the company," she reasoned, "then I'll make sure Victor can't either." Back at the Newman home, the family was in crisis mode. "We have to find her," Mariah insisted. "She's out there alone, and who knows what she's thinking." Nick agreed. "I'll alert the authorities. Maybe they can help locate her before anything happens." As they mobilized to search for Sharon, she was already several steps ahead. Feeling betrayed and cornered, she sought refuge in a secluded spot, her mind racing. "They won't stop," she muttered. "I have to protect myself." Her thoughts took a darker turn. The paranoia fed into anger, and anger into a sense of injustice. "If they see me as a threat, maybe I should be one." Unbeknownst to her family, Sharon began to formulate a plan, a way to regain control and assert her independence. But in her fragile state, her ideas bordered on dangerous. At the same time, Victor received news that complicated matters further. "Sir," his assistant reported, "there's been talk that Tucker might actually be considering a return after all." Victor's eyes narrowed. So Audra wasn't bluffing. This changes things. He knew that Tucker's involvement could jeopardize everything. Tucker was the mysterious investor holding a significant share of Glissade, and his return could mean the end of Victor's influence over the company. "I can't let that happen," he decided. "We need to act swiftly." Determined to maintain his empire, Victor started devising a strategy to neutralize any threat Tucker might pose. He considered reaching out to Kyle Abbott and Nate Hastings, who both had stakes in Glissade's future. "If Tucker wants to play games, he'll find I'm a formidable opponent," Victor mused. As night fell over Genoa City, multiple storms were brewing. Nick and his daughters searched desperately for Sharon, unaware of how close she teetered on the edge. Victor plotted his next move, ready to counter any challenge to his authority. Audra maneuvered in the shadows, her own ambitions fueling the fires of conflict. Audra, feeling the walls closing in, decided to take a more direct approach. She scheduled a meeting with Victor, presenting herself as a willing ally. "Perhaps we've been at odds unnecessarily," she suggested. "Maybe we can find common ground." Victor eyed her warily. "And why the sudden change of heart?" "Because I realize that fighting you is a losing battle," Audra admitted. But together, we could ensure that Tucker stays out of the picture for good. Victor considered her proposal. Aligning with Audra could be advantageous, but trust was a scarce commodity. "I'll think about it," he replied curtly. Meanwhile, Sharon's isolation led her to cross paths with an unlikely confidant, Cameron Kirsten, a man with a notorious past in Genoa City. Recognizing her vulnerability, Cameron offered a sympathetic ear. "You look like someone who's been betrayed," he observed. Sharon glanced at him cautiously. "And what would you know about betrayal?" "More than I'd like to admit," Cameron replied, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Sometimes, the people closest to us are the ones who hurt us the most."